Hey guys, how you doing? This is Hamid. Let's talk about an important conversation, which is how about when you're getting the sales, but you're not able to scale your operations because there is a lot of mess. Yes, when you want to scale from one resource to 10 resources, 10 to 50 resources, 50 to 100 resources, and 100 plus, what are you going to do to make sure that every time you deliver something to the customer, or every time you're communicating internally in your organization, then everything is standardized? That is not possible without having robust operations. And that is what I've mentioned in my book, Seven Figure Agency Mindset A to Z, in chapter number 28, which is System for Scaling. Yes. What kind of system do you actually need for scalability? And for that, the very first thing to ensure that every time you make a proposal, every time you communicate with a customer, every time you code something, everything is standardized. When you hire new resources, they come up with different backgrounds. It could be good background, or it could be even like if they've worked in a medium scale organization or ordinary organizations, are you going to accept their standard of work in your organization? Absolutely no. So you definitely need to have standardized operating procedures in your company. And what are those SOPs that you want to make sure initially when you start an agency or when you're building or scaling an agency should be out there in your company? Let's talk about those. So when I started my agency, the first year I spent in making sure that every document is standardized. I learned this by working with Fortune 500 companies. The Fortune 500 companies, the larger organizations, where you have hundreds and thousands of employees. Their way of work is absolutely standardized because they have set procedures in-house. Now, what could be the checklist of those procedures in your agency? It could be like tons of scenarios where you want to build the documents, the SOPs to make sure that your agency is standardized, but it may take a lot of time, and there might be a lot of documents which are not essential right now, but maybe at a later stage. There might be some operating procedure which are very crucial to have it right now. So let's talk about important SOP documents that you're going to make sure to complete within the first year of the scalability of your agency. Number one, lead generation. Yes. As soon as you wanted to build an agency, you want to scale an agency, you'll be looking to scale your sales team. And when you're scaling your sales team, you're hiring more business development people, the cold callers, the marketers who are getting you leads. But what if all the leads are scattered? What if their data is not organized? What if they're not being used for the remarketing? What if their follow-ups are not being done? So the very first document that you need for SOPs is the lead generation itself. It could simply be a document where you are putting up a journey, the first touch point, the second touch point. For example, you're using a HubSpot as a lead storage tool. So as soon as you get a call, you store that as a contact into the HubSpot, then you assign a deal to it, you put in the customer information, and then you're making sure that you are reminding yourself at a certain period of time. Then you're sending emails to the customers, you're sending text to the customer. Now, who will decide when to send an email? Who will decide that when to follow up with that customer? That is what should be mentioned in your lead generation SOP, and also your closing SOPs, and also your sales SOPs. Then how many touch points do you need? What kind of conversation you need to have? How are you going to communicate with them? What kind of fonts you're going to use? What kind of communication standards you're going to have? So put that all into the sales SOP or lead generation SOP, and also make sure that it should not jeopardize your company phase, because if you hire someone absolutely new and they're crazy about making sales and they are sending a new text, a new follow-up to your customers every 1 hour because there was no SOP, and they're probably using their own techniques just to get a customer for you because you're going to have like a high sales target. What if they are jeopardizing your company phase? So you should have a standard operating procedure done for the lead generators who are assigned to get you the sales. Then by the SOP, whoever is closing it, whoever is doing the business development, and they are meeting the customers, so there should be like a set interval. Okay, the SOP should say that you should have a lead and try to convert that lead to have the lead talk with the customer. And once the customer is on a call, then the SOP could say that close that customer for another follow-up to discuss the specs, to discuss the next project or to close a deal. That should be a part of the SOP, because what if you keep it open and a business development guy thinks that this is the thing that you need? However, by the right closing techniques, you should have a follow-up meeting. So there should be standardized closing procedure. So similarly for all the channels that you have, so you're getting leads from email marketing, you're getting leads from LinkedIn automation, by using DMs into the Instagram, you're getting leads from marketplaces like Upwork, you're getting leads by Facebook or Google ads, or any other channel, even it could be Expo. There should be proper standard operating procedures right from getting the lead to storage of leads to execution to follow-ups and to closing a deal as well. Then what if you have 5 different closers, everybody is using their best techniques to create a proposal, and they're all different? So you should have a standard proposal document or a template that should be used by all the resources with a proper company branding, with a proper branding kit that should be utilized, the fonts that should be utilized, the layout that should be utilized, and also everything that should have been mentioned out there, which could have like your company description, your reviews, your portfolio, the specs and everything. So have a proper proposal documentation in-house. And then apart from the project proposal, you should have a standard document for scope of work agreement. And as I mentioned in one of my last videos is that you should always close a sale with an agreement. And if you're not putting and signing an agreement, you could be jeopardized. So there should be a proper template that should be utilized by your closer when he's closing a deal with a customer, and he's just going ahead and editing it with like minor tweaks for every project or specs that is differentiated, and then create a proper scope of work agreement with the customer so as to make sure that you're not legally jeopardized with different versions of scope of work documents. And in one of my last video, I mentioned about project onboarding checklist. So there should be like 1-by-1 step which should be utilized by your point of contact / project managers to make sure that when they are onboarding a client, so they are sending an invoice, they're putting up the project management tool. We use Basecamp in-house. You got to make sure that you're using the proper tools. He's not starting on SMS. He's not starting on different manual email channels. So everything should be documented in such a way that project managers are absolutely aware of every step that should be taken before, during, and after the project has been completed. And then what if you hire someone and he's using slang with your customers? So there has to be a document for English communication or any other language that you speak, but there has to be the best practices and professional practices of using that particular language with the customer, and that should be implemented across all the organizations. So whenever they are communicating internally or externally with the organization, they should have a proper communication document in place. Sometimes you can actually save the time with a lot of questions that your customers are asking you, and you're gonna find out that 80% of the time those questions are same. So you can have a document with frequently asked questions which could be supplied to your sales team, and whenever those questions are being asked, then change them a little bit accordingly and answer those to the customers instead of just using your own language every time and differentiating the standard operating procedures. And then importantly, what if you have 50 developers or 100 developers and they are graduated from different universities? They were working in different companies before, but now since they are joining your company, they're using their own method to code an application. They're using their own methods to design a website. They're using their own methods to run a marketing funnel and campaign. Are you going to use their methods, or are you going to have a standard operating procedure given to your project managers, who is then assigned to give it to the leads, who is then assigned to give it to your developers or the designers or the marketers, to make sure that anytime and every time they code, they should have a high-level overview that what kind of coding procedures my company has to follow, or what kind of coding procedures I have to follow in my company to make sure that I'm delivering a high quality product. Yes. And how do I run a marketing funnel? And for that, probably you're going to have a blueprint in place to make sure that everything is trackable, everything is done correctly. You're setting up the tracking perfectly. You're setting up the retargeting campaign perfectly. You're setting up the funnel perfectly. So what if they're just using their own method and they think that this is the best method? So it is extremely essential that for every team you have standard operating procedures. Let's say for marketing, for development, for design, and for all the departments, so that the coding done by first developer and coding done by 50th or 100th developer is the same, which shows that you have a very robust standards of coding in place. You have very systematic way of running a marketing campaign. And if at any point a developer is not meeting those standard operating procedures, then you can have a quality assurance in place to actually define the KPIs for those individuals and probably reward and penalize them for meeting or missing those SOPs. And finally, what I found in Fortune 500 companies, there is always a repository of standard operating procedures, which you should, or every agency should have in their LMS or Drive or whatever. You want to keep it simple, keep it simple. But based on different accesses, so you could have a separate folder for sales team, you could have a separate folder for the production team, you could have a separate folder for, let's say, another team or design team or QA team. And you don't want to show them the marketing material, which is absolutely fine, but give them different accesses, give them different roles, and give them different documents. And as soon as they're onboarding, so their onboarding trainings should have all those documents explained by their manager, whoever they're reporting to. These step-by-step processes, work processes, blueprints, checklist, you can scale your agency from 1 to 10, 10 to 50, 50 to 100, and even 100 to 1000 if you're ensuring that everything in your workplace is standardized. Happy scaling your agency. Hamid here.